It's just legal marriage is a fucking diabolical leverage game in the United States. I'm just being honest. Devoid of religious significance or the idea of love, marriage is nothing but an awful contract that you shouldn't sign.
Welcome back to Powered by Ancestry. I'm your guide, Kwesi Kunadu. The most important decisions in our lives is not what house to buy. It's not whether to get a car. It is not where to send the children to school, if you choose to have children. The most important decision in our lives is a decision to get married and whom to have our families with. This episode, we will delve into the topic of marriage and ancestry. The decision to get married has to have a context, has to have, a setting for making that decision. In other words, different cultures in the world have their own priorities and have their own considerations for marriage. I'll put all that to the side. In African societies, the primary motivation, the primary reason for marriage is to have and sustain a family. And so marriage is a tool. It's an instrument. It's something to be used to accomplish something much more important. Because what are families but the building block of a community, of a state, of a nation, of a world? Essentially, the world is a collection of families. And so family is really the aim of marriage. Marriage is really the means for it. And that perspective allows us to really put marriage into perspective, again, into context. And so the decision to get married and whom to marry and whom therefore to have children with, to create a family or to enlarge a family, is one of the most important decisions that we will ever make in our life. This is the most consequential decision in our lives. There's a process that my people have for marriage. The process goes something like this. I, the young man, has an interest in a particular young woman. I do not approach that young woman or her family. For that, my uncle, my male representative in the family, will approach her family. Remember, marriage is about creating or sustaining families. And so both my uncle and her aunt will be the lawyers, representative, if you will, to determine the feasibility of combining my family and her family. We, the interested parties, do have a say, but not really a big one, because marriage is bigger than both of us. Sustaining the marriage, growing the marriage, feeding the marriage requires a community of people. And so really, this is not about two individuals running off to Las Vegas or other parts of the country to elope or to get married on their own, or even going to the county clerk to get your marriage license and do it that way. Those are individual decisions that usually have, in many cases, individual outcomes that are not sustainable in the long term. To have a sustainable, healthy, and truly functional marriage, which means a functional family, you have to have a community of people supporting you, behind you, and working to make sure that the community thrives because the family thrives. And so if marriage is the most important decision in our lives, then there should be a process in place to make that happen. And so the process I'm describing to you then continues in this way. Once the representative of both myself, the interested young man, and the interested young woman, once they meet, and they will meet over a period of time to ask all kinds of questions, to make what we call inquiries. And these questions, they range from what kind of diseases run within my family and hers? What kinds of issues or challenges, problems with money, problems with land, problems with temperament, problems with, you name it. And so these challenges are on the table. But what's also on the table are the assets, things that work well within the family. Not so much does he have a big house or does he have a car, or does he have a lot of money or what job he or she, has. But the big questions in terms of assets are, do they have good character? Is the family an honorable one, a righteous one? Or is the family known for the opposite of righteous? Are they sneaky, conniving, low down? Are they a family that is littered with liars, thieves, you name it? All these inquiries then hit a crescendo, a tipping point, where all that data is gathered and both parties, both families have the data to then make an informed decision. And that informed decision is either A, to go ahead with the ceremony called marriage, or whether to move on and find other partners for both myself and for her. And so this process of marriage, and I want to underscore process because process is really the key word here. It takes some time to do this deep digging. It takes patience. And in that time, both her and I are getting to know each other and getting to know our families. Now, I'm not suggesting that all families are harmonious or have to be harmonious in order for marriage to work. What I'm saying is that there has to be enough ingredients there, enough assets or tools, benefits to work through and work with the challenges that may be there, because we all have challenges. We all have flaws, right? It's really a question of how much can we work through and work with those challenges to make sure that they become less of a distraction and more of an asset in building a healthy, whole, and sustainable family. All marriages have to have a ground floor, what I'm calling a landing strip for the plane to land, meaning that there's certain things that we will not do. For instance, we will not argue in front of the children. We will not lie to each other. Ground rules, ground floor, landing strip, to say that with that ground floor, that allows a married couple and a family to work through all the challenges and burdens and stresses that come from having a human experience. The wedding ceremony is the least important of it all. Yes, there are important rituals for sure to be done to essentially reconcile her ancestry in this role play of a marriage and my ancestry. There's also rituals to ensure that there's enough of a ground floor to work on and work through what will be the challenge of living together between, apparently two strangers who have an interest in each other. And so with this ground floor, then you have the basis of saying, look, whatever happens in this marriage, we have a foundation, we have a ground floor, we have a ceiling where principally, in terms of our values, certain things we will not do. We will not put hands on each other. We will not curse at each other. We will not argue in front of the children. And those provide the guardrails or boundaries to ensure that almost anything that this couple encounters can be worked out. Because what's at stake? It's not only the family that's at stake, it is the ancestors that are at stake, the ancestry, the package is at stake. And for those of you that saw the introductory video to Powered by Ancestry, you will recall that this package is what bleeds into the marriage. In other words, she is a representative of all the people in our ancestry, including all their issues and challenges, all their benefits and gifts rolled into one person. I am all the people in my family that have done wonderful things, that perhaps have done some not so wonderful things. Their DNA, their lives, their spirit resides in me like it resides in her. And so the marriage is also the most fundamental opportunity to resolve and reconcile these challenges that are inherited. The same way that we're born into this world and we don't choose our names, our parents choose it for us, we inherit our names. The same way that we're born into this world and we encounter two people called our parents, we didn't choose them, we inherited them. And so likewise, we also inherit specific and sometimes very deep-seated challenges, issues, and downright just pain and trauma that then continue each generation and have little to any resolve. Less the resolve, the more the challenge, the more deeper the challenge, I would say. The more dense the challenge, the more harder the climb. And that's why family is really the place to work on and work through. And that's why marriage is the instrument, the tool to get to us to that place where we can resolve. And so one of the major pitfalls in the process of becoming married and therefore having a family is the factor of love or romance. Yes, that thing that makes our heart pump, that thing that wants to bring our partner near and close and embrace. Yes, that thing that wants you to land sweet kisses onto that person. That thing is a trap. Because what it does, the love is what ignites the connection between you two. It's no different than the starter for a car or the lighter that sparks the fire for the log, if you have a fireplace. But in all those cases, the igniter essentially ends after the ignition. And romance, similar ways, and the passion thereof is there to get things started, but it's not there to sustain it. What sustains the marriage is the commitment to work through and work on ancestry. Because both have skin in the game. Both her and me have skin in the game. Both of us have a vested interest to get something out of it. And therefore, both of us have interest in committing to that particular and that layered work. Because that work is going to see you through not only in your generation, but also in my children's generation and their children's generation. That's the long haul. And ancestry is all about the long game. It's measured by generations. And so as a parent, you also want to measure your success per generation. And so I look at my children, but I don't stop there. I'm going to look at, if I am, alive to do so, look at their children. And the features in their lives, that is the grandchildren's lives, will tell me how successful or not I was at working on those issues. And so the formula that I have is this. The heart is for feeling, emotion, and making connection. But decisions are made with the head. If you make decisions with your heart, you're falling into the trap and falling into the deep abyss of romance and love. And often the decisions end up biting us, end up being consequential and unsustainable. But when you make decisions about ancestry, that's made with the head. That's based on data points. That's based on patterns. That's based on doing some reconnaissance, some deep digging. Whereas the heart is there to connect, is there to share feelings, emotions, which have their place. And then, of course, the most important facets of our beings is our spirit. That if we're not connected at the level of spirit, that family, that marriage is not going to be sustainable. But the decision to want to get married has to occur in the head, not in the heart. And so marriage is really the conveyor belt that brings ancestry from the past into the present. According to my people, all human beings come from a place of ancestry when they're being conceived, and during that 9-month process before they reach birth and enter the human world. And when their life, at least their human life, has ended, they return, or at least part of them return back to their ancestry. And that's why we call on them through ritual libation and other means. Marriage is a conveyor belt for ancestry. And the extent to which we identify and work on and resolve and selflessly resolve those challenges and use those tools and assets, that will determine the health, the function, as well as the sustainability of our families. And so the most important decision that we make in our life is whom we marry, why we marry, and whom we have children with. And the family that comes from that will be the fruit or will be the continuation of ancestral challenges and issues if we don't take this process seriously. I'm Kwesi Kunadu for Powered by Ancestry. See you next time.